Hey everyone, in this video we are gonna look at some of the support methods provided by JavaScript while working with number data type. So I'm gonna create a new file and I'm calling it as math.js inside datatypes folder. So here I'm creating a new file and naming it as math.js. We have a variable called as n1, so I'm declaring a variable with var keyword and naming it as m1 and assigning a value as 9.6 whose data type is a number. So if I have to round this number to the nearest integer, we have inbuilt methods for the number object, something like n1.round. So I could have called the round method directly on n1 and it could have rounded it to the next highest integer, that is 10. So this could be correct, but in this case it is wrong. But you need to remember that number is a primitive data type. As I already mentioned, number is a primitive data type, right? There are no properties or methods that are directly available over primitive data types. So but while working with JavaScript, if we have to, this is wrong, we cannot use like this. So if we are working with JavaScript and if we have to round the number to the next nearest integer, we have something called as math object. On the math object we have a method called as round method, for which I can specify a variable. So in this case, that our variable is n1 and its value is 9.6. So how to define a math object? Math dot round of n1. So this is the syntax of rounding of a number to its next nearest integer. So what does round method does? It rounds off the number to its nearest integer. I will save this particular file and run this particular piece of code. Sorry, I forgot to give console.log of math.n1. I'm saving again it and I'm executing this piece of file and it is going to print 10 here. So what does round method does? It rounds off the number. The number is 9.6 and it is the nearest highest integer is 10, right? So it is going to print 10 here. So you will see that it will come back and give me an output of number 10. So let's say I have a variable n2. So I'm declaring one more variable n2 and assigning it a value of 9.2 here. So where n2 is equal to 9.2. Now if you do the same thing, console.log of math.round of n2. So math is a math object that is inbuilt library for mathematical operations in JavaScript for number data type, and inside math object we have the method called as round method. So if you hover over the round method, it says returns a supplied numeric expression rounded to the nearest integer. So if you read this, there is the definition, right? So it is rounding off to the nearest integer. For 9.6 the nearest integer is 10, but for 9.2 the nearest integer is 9, right? So it is going to print 9. So let's see this. I'm just saving the file and going ahead and running this piece of code. So it is coming and saying us the output as 9. So this is how the math.round method works. So you need to remember that we cannot call methods on numbers directly. So this is a number, right? So you cannot call methods directly on numbers because numbers are primitive data types. So but we can use the inbuilt math object. We can use this math object and use round method to round off a number to its nearest integer. This is a point to note. So here for the first example, 9.6, the nearest integer is 10. And for the second example, the nearest integer is 9. So that's how math.round method works. So I can also find the power of a number. Let's say math.console.log of math.pow. If I'm typing this POW method, it says returns the value of a base expression taken to a specified power. So basically this math.power method, it takes two arguments. So what are those two arguments? First one is the base value and the second one is the power. In this case I'm taking the base value as 2 and the power as 3. So I want 2 to the power of 3. So I'm just assuming taking the values as random, and the result, so it is nothing but 2 cube, right? 2 into 2 into 2. So even we can find the powers of a number using math.power method. So this method is called as math.power, return the power of a number. So when we save this file and execute this piece of code, is going to print us 8. So 2 cube is 8, right? So that is how math.power method works. So that is math.power method. This raises, here 2 is the base value and 3 is the power. 2 raises to the power of 3. So these are some of the functionalities that are being built into the language. There is one more. So there are actually a lot of them, but as part of this pre-course we are seeing only the basics of the math object. Again, on the math object there is a method called as max method. What does math.max method does is, so if we pass a series of numbers as arguments to the method, it returns the highest number in the series. Let's see how it works. Console.log of math. In math method, M is capital, you have to observe that, and max. The methods are, all methods are small letters only. Math.max of, now we are passing this series of arguments. So what is the definition? Returns the larger or maximum number of a set of supplied numeric expressions. Numeric expressions are nothing but numbers. So I am giving a set of numeric expressions like 10, 12, 2. There is no need of these expressions to be ordered, they can be of unordered as well. So on 112 and 998. So let's save this and run this piece of code using math.max method. So it is going to print the largest number in the series. So here the largest number is 998. So it is saying 998. So that is how math.max method works. So the math method takes number of arguments and it takes number of arguments comma separated, and it returns the maximum number in the series of arguments. So when we run this code, it gives us the maximum number in the series. Similarly, similar to max, we have another method called as min method. Same, it returns the minimum number or smallest number in the series. Let's check this out. Console.log. I'm taking this same example again. Sorry, I did not change the method. The method is min, right? So I'm just saving this piece of code and executing it. It is going ahead and printing us 2. So here in this series the least number is 2, right? So yes. This is how the math.max and the math.min method works in JavaScript. So min method will come back and tell us the minimum value from the series of arguments, unlike math method. So we could also find a random number. We have something called as math.random method, so which finds a random number in the series. So there is an inbuilt method in math object called as random. So what math.random method does is, it will generate a random number from 0 to 0.9999 up to 16 decimal places. So what does random method does is, it generates a random number from 0 to 0.99999 like this up to 16 decimal places. Don't worry and don't confuse about that. It's just a point to note for your information, but in exact I'll show you how it works. So you can see a random number. We have to generate a random number like this. So math.random. That's it. This is how a math.random method looks like. I'm in the syntax and I'm saving it and I'm executing it again. So it is generating a random number, and here there are 16 digits. This is what I meant earlier. So it generates a random number from 0 to 0.9999 up to 16 places. So if we check here, there will be 16 integers, 16 decimal places. So that's how math.random number works. And so let's say I want to generate a random number between 1 to 100. So I don't want all these decimal places or zeros. So I want a random integer number from between 1 to 100. So how to do that? So what I do is, I can multiply this random number generated by 100. So math.random, I'm just multiplying it with 100. So what happens? It gives in the multiples of 100, right? So that's what. So I'm just saving this file and going ahead and executing this piece of code. It says a random number between 0 to 99. Since it is multiplied by 100, it is showing in terms of, like it's a integer. It's not, like it's not a 0 point something, but it's a valid number like 99 something. The next requirement for me is, so let's say I want to round it off a number between 1 to 100 without any decimals, or I want a whole number. So I don't want all these decimals, I want a whole number if you ask me. So how to do that? So there is a small trick that we are doing here. So inside this console.log, I am rounding off that particular random number. So mat.roundoff So what round method does? It round it off to the next nearest integer, right? So that's what I'm doing, and I'm multiplying it with 100 again. Same. Since I need number between 0 to 100, I'm multiplying it with 100, and since I want a whole number but not in decimal places, without any decimal places, I'm rounding it off. So that's how it works, and I'm just saving it and running it again. So it says 82. So every time I execute this, it gives me a different number. So now it is saying 1, right? So it is differing from each and every time. It generates a random number. So that's the point. And so now instead of getting a floating number with decimals, I will get a whole number because of using mat.round method. And now what a round method does, it round off to the random numbers. So instead of getting a floating number with decimals, I will get a whole number without any decimal places, rounding off to the random numbers nearest integer. So don't confuse about it. You just try it out with different examples on your own, you will get a clarity. So every time I run this file, I get different whole numbers. So if you see, every time I run this, I'm getting different numbers. I'm getting 3, I'm getting 67. So these are all numbers between 1 to 100. These are all random whole numbers between 1 to 100. So that's the point, and that's how random method works. So every time I run this file, I get different whole numbers which are random between 0 to 100. So random numbers are widely used in real life in generating OTPs or one-time passwords for authentication in our web or mobile applications. So random numbers are used for generating OTPs. Random method basically. So that's a real world use case. So these are some of the math object methods on numbers. So the list is actually big, but these are good enough to get started with our pre-course. I will see you in the next class where we explore string data types. Thank you.